When I was 10 years old, I saw my 13 years old cousin cry so hard because her parents decided to send her to a boarding school because they said boarding school has the best teacher and environment to study. Since the first day she entered the school, she didn't stop crying and begged her parents to bring her out. At first, their parents refused to do so, but after a year, she finally moved to a day school to continue her study. Most of the parents agreed that boarding school will always produce an excellent kid in terms of academic and attitude. They would think that the kids will be able to adapt themselves in there. However, they didn't know what the kids actually facing in the boarding school because the ones who experience it will know the truth. So I would like to persuade all parents out there to think twice before deciding to send their children to a boarding school because it will honestly reduce the bonding between the children and the parents, suffer from homesickness and facing mental issue. Some parents might think that boarding school is a good place for the children to gain important life skills, but let me persuade you that it will actually affect the relationship between the parents and the children. As we know, boarding schools will only allow the student to go back home on a long school holiday, which is only twice a year. So they will seldom coming home and meet their parents and family. So when they are rarely coming home, they will have less time to communicate with their parents. So it will obviously reduce the closeness and the bonding between the children and the parents. Other than that, spending most of their time with peers also become one of the factors that could affect the relationship between the parents and the children. Boarding school students spend most of their time in school hostel instead of home. So they will meet their friends almost every day and spend their time together. So they will become closer and comfortable to each other instead of their own families since they eat, they sleep, they study all together. Some of them even prefer to share their own problems to their friends because they are more comfortable. So these two reasons which are seldom coming home and spend more time with peers could affect the bonding between the children and parents not only for short term but it can give a long term effect too. I cannot deny that sending kids to a boarding school will make them more independent and disciplined, but let me convince you that it actually can make them suffer from homesickness. Homesickness is a feeling of stress or anxiety caused by the separation from places or person that you know. Most of the parents will send their kids at the age of 13 to a boarding school, which is very young for me. So with the unfamiliar surroundings, the children will feel homesick because it is their first time being away from the family. Most of the children spend their childhood with their parents and their families. So when they are suddenly left alone in the boarding school, they tend to get homesick because they didn't know any of the family member that nearby them. Apart of that, boarding school will be hard for introvert child. As we know, introvert child has little courage to talk with people, especially a stranger. So they will struggle to make a new friend because they have less confidence to communicate with people. Living in a boarding school will only be fun if you have a lot of friends. So in this case, introvert children have less friends and it will make them feel more lonely. This situation could lead to the homesickness because they will keep remembering the people and the places that they are comfortable with. So homesick is not a thing that should be taught as normal because it will actually affect the children's academic, affect their body, and the worst part is it will actually affect their emotion if the feelings are continuously. Majority would agree that children in a boarding school have opportunities to create a lifelong friendship. However, they might face a serious inner problem living in a boarding school. So this brings me to my last point, which is children that be sent to a boarding school will face serious mental issue. All of you must be wondering how that could happen, right? So there are two biggest factors that contribute to mental health problem among students. So first is bullying. Bullying cases keep increasing these days, and most of the cases were coming from the boarding school student. So the recent violence issue has expelled 10 students from a boarding school over their involvement in a bullying incident. So in the video, the 13 years old student was seen being assaulted by their group of his peers. This bully issues not only will affect the student physically but also mentally. Some of the children that been bullied at school didn't have the courage to speak up or tell their parents about what had happened because the bully usually has warned them to shut their mouth. So they will seriously alter the victim's psychology and affect their mentally badly, as it can contribute to the intense feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. Second, the children might face mental issue problem because of the high academic expectations from the parents and the people around them. When you are studying in a boarding school, people will expect you to be smart and genius. They will expect you to excel in every single exam until the thought of not getting an A will really scares you. So this is actually not a healthy thing because it will put so much pressure on the student. So talking from my own experience, I used to witness this one boarding school student getting scolded by their teacher because he didn't get the best mark like his other friends. So since that day, the students started to stay out until late night and sleep less just to do some revisions for his subjects for the sake of fulfilling other people's expectation. So at the end, he was diagnosed with mental illness by the psychiatrist and has to rely on medications to stay sane. This shows that how pressure from high expectation could affect your mental health so bad and could lead to some serious mental problems that will change your life 180 degrees. So these two factors are always happening in a boarding school that will give a big impact to the students mentally. So to conclude, despite of the advantages, sending children to a boarding school will also have some disadvantages as it could affect the relationship between the parents and the children, causing them to suffer from homesickness and facing mental issue. Again, I want to repeat that parents should think many times before sending their children to a boarding school. As a parent, we should consider what is the best for our children instead of fulfilling our own desire. Not all children are suitable to be a boarding school student. After all, boarding school is not the only option for the student to get the best education. Always remember that the best school is the one that our children are comfortable with. So that's all from me. Thank you so much for listening.